So yeah, Claude is a accredited housing, like community-led housing advisor and land trust ambassador, with over 2 decades of dedication in housing, social justice, and impactful project delivery. He was recently awarded an MBE for his contributions in the self-build and community housing sector, and also commissioned by Leeds City Council in 2015 to write a self-build 10-year strategy. So we did discuss a little bit of that last week, and we will be sharing out some of the content, video, and everything from last week. But yeah, Claude has a lot of experience, and we had a wonderful session last week. So this week, Claude will continue that. Just to go through a little bit on this session, and well, just to recap a little bit on last session, Claude kind of covered the history and the fundamentals of community-led housing. So speaking about the origins of it, the US civil rights movement, and also the UK kind of postal discrimination and the need for for community housing. And also Claude spoke a bit about his own experience and what kind of motivated him to do the initiatives that he had done. And this week we're going to be going through the kind of step-by-step. So last week we did, the types, and this week we'll be going through the step-by-step methodology of setting up housing initiatives. So basically the setting up process and how it's done. To go through a little bit also about the format of this session, we've got an 11-minute video to set the scene, which I will share in a moment, and the how-to and setting up process, which Claude will go through the kind of main body. We will then take a 10-minute break, and then, before the 10-minute break, we'll do considerations as well, and barriers and solutions, then a 10-minute break, and then we'll do a Q&A. So if anybody had any leftover questions from last week, that's a good opportunity, because it will be a longer Q&A than last week, to just kind of go through that, as well as any questions from this session, and just kind of open to hearing anyone who's involved in community-led housing, co-ops, and their experience and insights. So without further ado, I think let's go into the video. If everybody, before we start, if everybody's kind of able to turn on their camera, if they're comfortable, that would be really helpful. Just so kind of like, yeah, that would be really helpful. And if you could just put a little intro about yourselves in the chat, that would also be lovely. So maybe your name, pronouns, and where you're based, if you're involved in any kind of community-led housing initiatives, or if not, what you'd be interested in learning. Yeah, so I'm just going to start sharing the video, and then Claude will begin the session.
We're not training, but we've got unemployment at the rate of, we've got alcoholism, we've got drugism, all these things who are just disenfranchised people. We've got mental health issues for people that are disillusioned by the system that we're living in. How can we empower them to actually be part of the solution? My name's Claude Hendrickson. I'm the founder of Frontline Community Self-Build, which was a project that was done in 1994. We started out as a group in 1988. It took us 5 years to get on site. So this project has been built over 20 years. I always say 92,000 bricks, 52,000 blocks, 12 semi-detached houses, built by a group of African Caribbean guys from Chapeltown. What I say about myself is I was born, educated, and brought up in Chapeltown, so I've lived in Chapeltown all my life. Since doing Frontline Self-Build, I'd like to think I've been an advocate for community-led housing. I'm the equality, diversity, and inclusion advisor to Leeds Community Homes. I'm also the first national accredited community-led black male community-led housing advisor in the UK, certified by the Chartered Housing Institute. With Leeds Community Homes, I am trying to encourage more being Black and ethnic minority people. I'm also looking at other minority groups such as people with disability, LGBT groups, any groups that are minority groups. I'm looking right now at homelessness amongst refugees. So I'm working with many groups. We had 12 guys start out, myself number 13. All 12 got a house. All 12 of them got a house. All of them ended up in a shared ownership situation with Leeds Federated Housing. So they each owned 25% for their sweat equity, and then the other 75%, they would pay rent to Leeds Federated Housing, and then they had the option at any time they wanted to buy out chunks of the other 75%. I would say back in the mid-80s, there was a lot of stereotypical view of black men and black boys called Harewood housing. They came to our area and talked about they were going to be building houses in our area. And they said that when they would be building these new houses, they would create an enterprise. So they could go on and create local contractors that could tender to the city council. So that's who we were, just a group of unemployed black guys that couldn't find work at the time. And actually, because we were single, couldn't find housing either. For me, the long-lasting impact is best part of 25 years later, we're stood here today, and you can see the quality of the houses. So the lasting impact is that this was done by a group of unemployed people, but quarter of a century, it's still here. They're still in pristine situation. You can see the whole area. I mean, in the summer, it's fantastic. That's number one. Number two, I can bring other people here now to see it. Number three, it inspired. So what it has done, it has left a legacy of community-led housing in the city of Leeds. It is the foundation of that legacy. This is my greatest achievement in my life, actually doing this after my children and my grandchildren. This is definitely my shining glory, I feel anyway. I'm really proud that we did this. We're gonna walk, Latch is doing a refurb, so we're gonna walk past the Latch refurb. That way we kind of take in 3 projects as opposed to Chaco and Frontline. We're gonna actually take in Frontline, Latch, and Chaco. What we'll do, we'll go down around the road and we'll turn. I just passed it just now to make sure, and then we'll go down Harold Avenue, and then when we get to Harold Avenue, we'll turn down Spencer Place. Walk down Spencer Place, and that'll bring us right to Chatham. Latch is more trying to give, to get property and do them up for people to live in. And they do a bit of training, but not as much and in-depth training that I did. I don't think any project in Leeds have tried at the level that we did to get people qualified in construction training skills, to make them, giving them a house is okay, because if you've got somebody that's down on their luck and you take them through a process where we'll give you a house, but you don't give them skills, they then end up just being a person in a house. They still need that get up and go to become employable. You get what I'm saying? Some people think there's a certain way things should be done. You know, they think that people should wait on the system to solve their problems. I think the system needs to look at how we can be involved in solving our problems over the next 10 years. In the West Yorkshire, in the combined authorities, they have to build something like 120,000 houses over the next 10 years. So why can't a percentage of them be ring-fenced from the outset to be community-led housing projects? Around the mayor's region, we could be delivering something like, and I think the West Yorkshire mayor could use that as a platform for bringing these communities together. The community-led housing sector in Leeds, I feel, needs to create and develop a construction training centre just for community-led housing groups, where all them groups can go and learn, even if, you know, learn a bit about plumbing, learn a bit about electrics, learn a bit about roofing. now is down the bottom of Roundy Road, corner of Spencer Place, where the Chaco project is happening. Chaco stands for Chapel Town Core Housing Project, courtesy of Bill Phelps and his team. I think they're building 28 houses here. The concept of Chaco is brilliant. With lots of the housing projects, local authority and housing association projects, they just build houses and then they just throw people in. And there's no sense of community. Chaco is very much about creating the people who are going to live in there know each other before they're actually built, so they can look at the skills they've each got and what they can do. So I like the core housing kind of slant on community-led housing. That's why I say it's important to look at the length of time it takes from the inception of the idea to actually delivery. You know, if it takes, I think Chaco, I would say Chaco's taken maybe 7 years. Something, I'm not sure if it's 7, it might be less than that, but it's a long process. That's why, you know, going forward, even with the mayor, we need to look at planning permission. How, you know, we need to look at land. You know, there needs to be a proper register of available land. There needs to be a shorter planning process. It takes too long, and that kills groups. That's the fly in the ointment of getting more of these done. Planning. Well, what I'm trying to achieve is raising the profile, using good practice, using existing projects that are happening as the beacon and the light for others. Around the country, there's examples, there's hundreds of examples of whether it's Lilac, whether it's Chaco, whether it's Frontline, whether it's the empty home programs. You have to use examples that people can touch and feel, not theoretical stuff. Physical, and that will encourage more people, because they can say, oh, I'm speaking to somebody that's done it. It's like you speaking to me. It's like, and you've just seen Frontline. You know what I'm saying is 100% true, not because of it's coming out of my gob, but because you can see the bricks for yourself. And to me, that's what it's about. I think, back to his point, that's what we're selling. You know, that's what here's an example. Lilac's an example, Latch is an example, Frontline. Now, which one of them examples fits you?
Yeah, wow, right. Yeah, it's not finished, but it might be better just to leave it there.
No problem. Amazing. That was an incredible video, Claude, by the way. I really do like how you look at housing as an ecosystem and as a network, and how it's tied so much to like health, well-being, employment. So thank you very much for sharing that, and I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, and what we'll do is we'll share it in the chat, because I think your internet was a bit slow, so it was making it a bit bitsy, but yeah. Can you see that? 1 minute, 1 minute. Can you see that?
Yeah.
You can see my page, you can see the Nourishing Economics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might want to put it on slideshow.
Yep, I'm going there now.
You're going there now, great.
So everybody can see that. Can I get some thumbs up, some participation? Some thumbs up, please. Some thumbs up, some thumbs up, some thumbs up. Don't be shy. Just get them thumbs up. See me. Okay. Well, this is number 2 of three workshops that we're running around demystifying community-led housing and housing trust with me. Rax has done a quick recap of what we went over last week, which was about talking about the history again, and the different options of community-led housing and community land trust, and about the Black journey with housing in the UK. Series 2 is about the process, and obviously it's with me. Thanks for the picture. Every time I see that picture, I love that picture. That was created for me. Setting the process, how it's done. So again, thank you all for taking the time out on this Wednesday night. Well, it's kind of wet and breezy here in Leeds. Do put in the chat where you're from and why you're interested in this session. So today we're going to go through grassroots activism, existing community organization, and a developer partnership. So we're going to go through the process of setting up a self-build or a community-led housing. When it comes to grassroots activism, and a lot of you I know are working in local situation, when it comes to it, it's local people that feel it the most, and they obviously, I'm just moving this around. Where's it gone? My screen's gone a bit funny. Yeah, when it, go back, sorry. Yeah, local people that feel it most. And many of you are working with local groups. And this is about, not just about trying to convince you to be a part of this movement, but trying to convince you to go out to the groups that you work with and tell them about community-led housing. And hopefully in the future, you may be an initiator of a project. So it's about getting the message out. It's those same people who know what would make a situation better. A lot of people are existing right now in bad housing situations, bad landlords, no options to get themselves on the housing ladder. The community-led housing sector gives you that option. A well-organized grassroots campaign that is committed to driving change. Well, community-led housing is definitely committed to driving change. And it is from the bottom up, and it is a seriously powerful thing. Eventually, hopefully, we will be getting around the country and visiting some projects, and you'll be able to see for yourself. Like I said in the video, a lot of people really need to see a project and speak to the people that are in it and have developed it. But there's no denying it. Grassroots community-led projects can be challenging. So there's no joke about that. It can be challenging, require dedication and individuals with a knack of getting key players on board. Because yes, getting the group together is an important thing, but making partnerships, getting key players in your local authority, your housing association, housing bodies, training providers, getting them on board. This is not just about the individuals, but the network that you create. Existing community organizations, and I'm speaking to you as a group, because some of you are part of existing organizations, but organizations like Development Trust and community anchors, which I see most of you as community anchors, people actively working in and with your communities, are well placed to extend their current activities to generate additional income. So the idea is that an existing organization may not have thought of getting involved in community-led housing or housing, but it's a way of the organization creating additional income for their organization. With their strong focus on strong governance and networks, many organizations are now bracing themselves or branching into housing as to further support their communities. And sorry, I've got these admits coming up on my screen. A developer partnership, and I want to speak about developer partnerships because these projects, you can't do them on your own. A partnership with your local authority, landowners, housing associations, or small builders that want to provide housing to the benefit of the local area into perpetuity. They'll access community-led housing expertise to recruit founder members, and we'll go through the process a little later on from within the community. Support them to take over ownership and stewardship, because it's once you build the houses, you have to manage the houses. So the stewardship is the management of the homes, and they may support an existing group or organization to deliver their ambitions. So people like myself, across England now, there's something like 400, no, sorry, my apologies, 400 have been trained, 200 have been accredited, community-led housing advisors. So there will be a community-led housing advisor somewhere in your patch. You may not know about them yet, but we'll talk a little later about how you get to find out where they are. Barriers, because I think when people talk about community-led housing, they automatically look at the barriers, and they are a number of barriers, but we have some solutions. Suitable and land availability, poor land choices on offer. Often, like with Frontline, we were offered a derelict piece of land. It was in an undesirable location, but we changed all that. So now it's a prime piece of land and it's in a very desirable location. So that's one barrier. Access to capital. Financing self-build is hard. Financing building your own home is hard for any individual, even in the grand designs. But self-builders struggle to find funds to build their own homes. Legal requirements, planning, building control, permissions. These are challenges that challenges to progress, particularly in the terms of time spent waiting for permission. So one of the drawn out things when setting up a community-led housing is getting actual planning permission. Local authorities who even are supportive have a planning department that might not know very much about community-led housing. So it's again about convincing them. Once you've convinced the planning, then finding the cost and general bureaucracy, you've got to do community engagement. You have to go and meet with the residents around the site that you're going to build on. So it's not as simple as just you identify a site and we're going to build. You have to do community engagement, because the community can put up protests against the project, which stops the project happening. Self-builders also say, it's a general thing, that there's a lack of available official information, publicity, networking opportunities for self-build, which is kind of true in one sense. But one of the solutions to that is now they have an organization called the Community Land Trust Network, which has a website. And on that website, you can get information. They have a community-led housing website, which is now full of resources where you can go and get information on existing projects, new projects, projects in the planning. So there is help for you out there. Sim is coming back in again. So there is information out there for you. So what I'm going to do now, what time is it? It's 5 minutes past. I think it's break time now.
Yeah. So we're just going to take a 10-minute break. It's 6:03 now. Should we come back at 6:13?
Yeah. We don't want to be banging away at you. We'd like you to get a break, stretch your legs, get a cup of tea, finish eating, those of you that have got your screens down. So we're going to have this 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and look at some solutions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. See you.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Everybody back, everybody fueled up, tanked up. Guppy's still cooking as she always does. Oh, you stopped cooking. Okay. Okay, right, now we're gonna get to the exciting part. We've talked about the barriers, whether it's land, whether it's finance. Now, what we want to talk about is the solutions. We really want to talk about the solutions here. And this is the part, and then we're going into the steps you take to it. So what are the solutions? The solutions, number one for me, is all councils should have and should be practicing a self-build and community-led housing register. What we have to do, one of the key things for me, is promoting this register. You need to be going on to local council websites and looking for the self-build stroke community-led housing register. And you need to get as many people as you can to register on the council housing register list. The importance of this is that we need to be showing there's interest in doing community-led housing. So we need to go on the council self-build and community-led register. The reason for this is that the council right now, lots of council are disposing of land and buildings. And if you're on the register, they will send you information on any land and buildings that they are disposing of. So it's the best way of, instead of running around looking for land, or if you've identified a piece of land, then you can get back in touch with the council and find out who owns that land. So self-build and community-led housing registers is a must. You know, get your auntie on it, get your mom on it, get your brother on it, your sister, friends, as many people as we can on this register. Engaging a local housing association. If you have a housing association in your area, if you have a Black housing association or a BME housing association, even better. But going and engaging with them, meeting with their project manager, starting the conversation, letting them know, because housing associations may have small pieces of land that they have been allocated that they may have no use for, and they may be able to donate or give you that piece of land for a decent price. There's also becoming a registered provider, an RP that's called. When you speak about housing, you'll hear them mention RP. That's a registered provider. Housing associations are registered providers. The local council is a registered provider. Building organizations like WIMP and them kind of companies are registered providers. Community groups can become registered providers, but it's a long process. So, but it's a worthwhile process. But if you can get a partnership with a housing association, even better for you. When we did Frontline, we partnered with Leeds Federated Housing. When Chaco did their project, they partnered with a Black housing association called Unity Housing Association. So it's worth your while to start building them. Community share offers. Community share offers are a fantastic way of raising funds for delivering projects like this. I think Chaco raised something like £350,000 in community share offers, where people may donate money, you know, philanthropists, people in the community, people that know of the good work you're doing may buy shares and get a small interest paid back to them on an annual basis at a time in the future. So community shares is a good way of raising finance. Engaging Homes England. Homes England is the government's department for giving grants for housing. So any housing you see, social housing, that organization will have been given a grant by Homes England as part of the project to build their own homes. So Homes England is finance. I'm not touching the admissions anymore. So yes, so finance, Homes England funds community-led housing all over the country. It funds all RPs, housing associations, local authorities. They all have to apply to Homes England. So the housing association you may partner with can make the application on your behalf. And then there's investors. You'll be surprised with the work that you're doing. Anita Shevington will get to your question in a little while. Oh, can I take it now? No, I'll get to your question. Rax will deal with that, and I'll answer it later on. So investors, what you will find, depending on the type of work you're doing, you will find people who are sympathetic, who appreciate the work that you're doing. They can't help you directly, but what they can do is invest in what you're doing. So community investors, private investors. So there are options to solutions to the funding. So again, you're going to get the slides, so you'll be able to check out what I've spoken about. Right, this is the exciting part. While there's no correct way to start a community-led housing project or a community land trust, there are 5 key steps. Number 1, you get a group. Number 2, site. 3, plan, build, and live. So it's a 5-step process. The group, setting up a steering group. A steering group, initial group, can be about 5 members, 5 or 7 members, I say, because it's good to have an odd number, because you want to have a casting vote, somebody that can decide. So 5 or 7 people, that's how you start your steering group. And with that steering group, in principle, you would elect a chair, a treasurer, a secretary, a vice chair, a vice treasurer, a vice secretary. And then what you would do, that 7, once you've established the group, would go out and recruit other members. So the 7 would go out and do the recruiting of other members. That's not down to any individual, that collected 7. You agreed on a shared goal and incorporate. That means you would have to register. You would have to register either with the Community Land Trust Network if you want to become a land trust, or you would register with the community-led housing sector organization. And it's a bit like setting up any other organization. It's a bit like setting up a charity, setting up a CBS, a CIC. Any one of them formats are exactly the same formats you would go through. And the group would develop, and once the group is registered, they can apply for small pots of funding, which would help specialists come in and help them develop their business plan. You'd identify a site and find a suitable site that aligns with your financial goals. And in identifying a site, like I said before, what you may be able to do, a local housing association may be able to gift you a site. You may have a landowner around you that may be able to gift you or give you a site for a decent price, or the local authority can identify a site and they will obviously put a price on it, but then you will get help from the Community Land Trust Network and the Community-Led Housing Network to raise the funding. A plan, you'd work up a full plan, including details. So you'd work up a full plan with an architect. If any of you are architects, you'll know the process. You will get a QS. You will get find yourself a solicitor, all of these who are sympathetic to what you're planning. Then you will build. There are lots of options, which some of them I mentioned last week, bringing in a contractor to build. They could build the whole thing for you. You might go through the process of self-finishing, which means the local contractor or the contractor builds the shell and you do all the plastering, the painting and decorating and stuff like that, so you can break it down. Another one waiting to be let in. So yeah, you can build it yourself or finding a contractor or leaving it to your partner housing association. The housing association could build it for you, like Unity did for Chaco, and then at a specific date in the future, they hand it over to you and your members, and then you live in it. Once you have your people living in the homes, you as actively become like a landlord and oversee the managing agent or the landlord you've partnered with. So you would work with the housing association. Either they would collect the rents, or you as your organization would collect the rents and pay them back to the housing association. So that's how it works. 5 steps to delivering a project. Group, site, plan, build, and then live in the properties. Each community-led housing organization has its own national umbrella, which promotes and supports the sector. So the National Community Land Trust Network is there if you want to become a land trust. And I spoke about land trust last week, where as a community land trust, you may have some housing on that site. You may have a day center. You may have an adventure playground. You may also have an allotment where you grow your own food. The Confederation of Housing Cooperatives, CCH, again, they have their own website, UK Co-Housing, which is a choice by many to do co-housing, and we spoke about that last week, which is housing with a common house. They have their own network, and you can go online and visit their websites and get information. The National Federation of Tenant Management Organization, TMOs, as it's otherwise known. Self-help housing self-help housing. They have a national self-help housing center in Swindon, and they and there's a website for that. Community Self-Build Agency. Locality, formerly the Development Trust Association, is another organization that supports community-led housing. Yeah. So there is a lot of support. So even if you're thinking of having an idea or having a project, there are organizations out there that are there to support you. So don't feel you don't ever need, and there's something like 200 community-led housing advisors out there in the system ready to help. So even if you just want to start a discussion, have a conversation, so somebody like me would be willing to come and speak with your group, or speak with the 7 steering group members and support them through the process. So you don't need to think that you're going to be on your own. Benefits, core benefits from doing community-led housing and community land trusts are diversification in the built environment, goes to say. So you're diversifying how housing is being delivered. And I think this government has said they want to build 1.5 million houses. 500,000, well, not 500,000, but maybe 200, 300, 400 of them could be community-led housing. Meeting sector targets, that would be helping the government deliver their targets. Reduction in empty homes, increasing quality in housing stock. When self-builds are very, and self-builders are very proud of what they're doing, so they go that extra mile to make sure their housing is quality. Better housing design. We're living in a time, because of climate change, where they're wanting more eco-friendly housing. So your project could be about eco-friendly housing, adding that to the housing stock. And I mentioned that there, increased enterprise and opportunities in construction and maintenance sector. Why I say that about opportunities, number one, giving people skills in construction. Not many women are in construction. Community-led housing is a doorway for more women getting into construction, and young girls. And BME people are not that are underrepresented within the construction industry. So the opportunities, and then when you build the houses, you have to maintain them, because dereliction is caused primarily by bad maintenance. So you learn skills in plumbing, you learn skills in electrics, you learn stuff so you can spot a problem. And even if you're not going to solve the problem, you at least know what you're looking at. So yes, there's many core benefits from doing community-led housing, just to name a few. And new homes bonus is increased. More housing, because this government is not going to build housing on its own. And even the traditional way of building housing is not going to make up the numbers. So community-led housing is an opportunity for this generation to get involved in house building and getting a step on the ladder. As I mentioned, a list of benefits, multiple outcomes from community-led housing: affordable, community-based, social enterprise, employment and training, construction, tackling the skills gap. There's not enough young people coming into construction. Youth unemployment. Many of you are working with organizations where unemployment is a big issue, and for our young people, and construction offers a massive opportunity, because when you think about construction, some people just think about housing, but B&Q, if you get a job working in B&Q or home base or one of them kind of places, you're still involved in construction. Qualifications, active participation, safer neighborhoods, rewarding for volunteers, empty homes, benefit to owners. Thank you. We're ready now, because I really want to take some of your questions and hear what you've got to say and what you think. So don't be shy. You know, if you've got any questions, you've written them down. Now's the time. Last week we did a lot of presentations. This week we want to do a little bit more speaking and getting your views. So let's go to that. Like I said, please join the movement. Please get involved. Even if you don't want to build your own house, please get on that register. Please, let's make this happen. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Claude. That was really, really, really like insightful. I believe, Anita, you had your hand up at one point. I don't know if you wanted to kind of ask your question. I think worth just jumping straight into the Q&A.
Yeah, the question, hi everyone. The question I had been answered already, but I'll ask another one. I'm in the process of doing the form right now, as you was talking, and in it, there's lots of questions about what area you're interested in. I just wondered, you know, how do you recommend people fill it in? Do you put kind of any, or is it, you know, yeah, what are your thoughts? Because it's obviously listing every area in Birmingham where I live.
Okay. Again, the different councils will offer a little bit different. Now, yes, I would say number one, you go for the area that you're interested in. So whether it's Handsworth or Small Heath or Edgbaston, for example, you go for it. Or what you could do is put in, if it allows you, put in a number of different areas that you might just be interested in, because some of the areas in your city will not have as much availability as other areas. So for example, Handsworth is kind of saturated, but Handsworth also has some big buildings that are derelict. And when you're thinking about land, don't just think about open spaces. It might be a big factory that's just stood there, that if you knock down that land, you can build the houses on that land. So yes, I think it's important that you kind of do a bit of research within your community and make that decision. I hope that answers your question, Anita.
It does, because what I'm thinking, I mean, there are certain areas that I would be interested in, but I think that if, for example, something didn't come up, is it worth kind of adding a few more that you would kind of like have a second interest in?
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Because again, you might choose an area which doesn't have any plots of land, and in the next borough there might be a plot of land that just might mean you have to move to that borough, or you suggest that borough. But yeah, I think put as many as you can that resonate with you. Thank you. I'll go with Phoenix.
Oh, sorry. I think Dawn had the.
Sorry,
Yeah, that's
Raps.
no problem at all. Sorry.
You're the facilitator. Sorry, my
No, all
apologies.
good, all good. But yeah, we had Dawn next, and then we'll move on to Phoenix. And if anyone's shy of speaking or anything, you can always post in the chat as well.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see more faces as we're into the chat. If you're not too shy or you're not eating. Hey D, how are you doing?
Hey, hi everyone. Thanks again for creating the space. I just wanted to find out, for people who are interested in setting up land trusts specifically, what is available, like, because obviously there's a cost in them setting them up to get the support that's required, whether it's from the community land trust network or whether it's from bringing in people like yourself. There's a cost that is necessary to get started. And I just wondered what measures are in place, because generally for a lot of different groups, especially racialized groups, but especially Black groups, there is always this lack of access to funding. It's always very specific with certain projects. So we have historically been financially excluded, and it continues now. So do you know, is there anything in place, or if there isn't, is there something that we are able to do to think as a network how to provide the funds for these startups? And I think especially because we have so many young people on this call, how are we creating that legacy to really kickstart and support the younger people to start this type of project?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, Don. What I would say is that just before COVID, they had something called the Community Housing Fund, which set up across Britain 27 community land trust hubs. And when they did that process, which was a really good process, and like you said, Black and ethnic minorities didn't know about this process, what would happen is once you got your 7 people, you were ready to set up as an organization, you would get in touch with your local hub, community land trust hub, and they would give you £10,000 in support. They wouldn't necessarily give you the finance, but what they would do, they would pay for your registration. They would pay if you needed to work with an architect. They would pay for a trip to go and visit projects. They would pay for that out of that £10,000. Now, the problem with that is the Community Housing Fund finished, I think it finished in 2022. So right now, the Community Land Trust is lobbying government, but they had to wait, they had to wait for the new government to come in so that they can lobby to see if they can get the Community Housing Fund reinstated. But again, that's going to be on the back of evidence that people are interested, and that's why I'm pushing for people to get on the register. So nationally they can see people are interested. So yes, and what I would say, Dawn, if you go on the Community Land Trust Network website, identify the nearest hub to you and ask them the same question, because they are trying. One of the things I'm looking at with Leeds and West Yorkshire is we've just had a combined mayor elected. So I'm pushing for the combined mayor to replace that community housing fund, even if they give like £5,000 to groups that set up that gives that initial seeding finance. So it is being talked about, people are lobbying, and we're trying to get the community housing fund reinstated, which would facilitate exactly what you're asking, Dawn.
Claude, can I also come in and just add, I think Dawn's made a really good point, and at a kind of micro level, so at this kind of level where people are in a really early stages, I was just thinking about the conversation we're having in Oxford, where you're coming over to do a bit of Skillshare, and we're working basically with a redistributor of some philanthropy to support. It's not even, it's like, there's one thing about the access to skills and insights, like time with Claude, and getting support to go and visit different sites, but also thinking of even more equitable ways, like paying for people's time as they participate in the learning, and finding ways to like cover their time, cover their expenses, just cover the basically the capacity for organizing the community, which I think very rarely gets done. And it's definitely something that we have been like also lobbying philanthropy about, so that when folks from the community are really committed at the level of wanting to govern a community asset or begin thinking about self-build, that we're not burnt out from the lack of resource or like material support that is necessary to particularly support like communities of color and working class communities of color to engage in that. So I think it's like, yeah, thinking on both ends as well about what's available.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Guppy, in that you can wait on the system, but you may be able to identify. So once you've established your organization and you can say, well, these are the 5, 6 people, 7 people that are leading this, you can then maybe start, like I said, speaking to your housing association, speaking to other people in the sector. It might even be speaking to your local authority. Your local authority might just have a pot of finance that is there. And I agree with Guppy. When we were doing Frontline, we had a little pot of finance that, for example, if we wanted to take the group on an away day, we covered all their costs. If they had to attend a fair number of meetings, we paid them out of pocket expenses. So it kind of enhances the journey. So yeah, thank you for that, Guppy. Rax, who's the next?
Amazing. So next we've got Phoenix, and then I will cover Rosita's question.
Hi, thank you for this. It's been really interesting as someone like very new to this, so loving all of the support and advice. My question was linked to the first question, where you said about some places are saturated. So I was just wondering, how would we find out what places are saturated and like where's best to go and stuff? Would that be one of the advisors that you recommended, or is there like a website where we could find statistics and stuff on that? What would you recommend?
Okay, my view on that is that I live in an area called Chapeltown in Leeds, which has been gentrified. When I say so, it's a bit like Brixton, it's a bit like Ladbroke Grove, it's a bit like Hackney, it's a bit like Handsworth, Moss Side in Manchester, where over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of house building going on in that area. That's kind of what I call saturated, that, you know, there's been a lot of work happening in that area. You drive around that area and you see a lot of modern red brick housing. So that's why I call saturated. So for me, if I was trying to do another project in Leeds, I probably wouldn't aim at Chapeltown. I would just go outside of Chapeltown. I might go to Hyde Park. We have an area in Leeds called Hyde Park. I might go to Hare Hills. I might go to Beeston, because them areas are still, I call them postally discriminated against. They've not had no development. There's nothing happening in them areas. So that's what when I talk about saturated, and you can find that one area has a lot of activity happening in that area. A lot of voluntary sector groups are in that area, and that helps with the saturation, and it can give an impression that there's a lot going on in that area. So that's what I mean by you know, saturate, you know, there's a lot going on for that area as we stand. So yeah, what I would do, and if you live in a city, you kind of know the areas. You know the areas that are quite active, quite a lot going on. You know, I know I go to Birmingham all the time, so I quote Birmingham, and I know Handsworth. I know it so well. And when I drive around Handsworth, I still see pockets of deprivation, but there's been a lot of housing built there over the last 20 years, 25 years. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Phoenix, for that question. I believe, Guppy, you've answered Rosita's question. So I just wanted to ask the floor if there might be any more questions. Eleanor, go for it. Thank you so much.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, I came a bit late, so sorry if some of this has already been talked about. But I was just wondering about the fact that it seems like there's kind of a political support in local councils for basically funding massive developers, and not the kind of housing that you're talking about. I don't know if there's any campaigning work that needs to be done, or how do you kind of create a political culture shift around that? And also it feels like maybe individual town planners are in some way like picking up on a certain ideology which maybe needs to be rejected.
Thank you for that question. And that is why I'm promoting the self-build register, and that, because the way to build this sector is to show the interest, is to show that there's people that are interested in doing these kinds of projects. But the local authorities ain't going to know if you're just one person banging on the door and saying, oh, I'd like to do a self-build, me and who. So what you've got to do is, if you can get more names, that's why I say your brothers, your sisters, your friends, colleagues, all, even if you've got a house already, even if you've got accommodation, get yourself on these lists, so that, because I'm part of another network which is called the Right to Build Task Force, and what they are doing, they're checking councils have got the list, and how are they promoting that list, and how are people engaging with that list? Because some of the councils have just shelved it. They've just put it on the shelf. This is, oh, nobody in our town is going to be interested in doing this. So they're not promoting it. So the only way we can change that is by getting as many people. And that's kind of why, you know, I thank Decolonising Economics and the movement that they've got, because it's getting me to more people to say, especially younger people, get your names on these lists. We have to show willing. We have to show, it's a simple thing. And somebody's posted, is it Shaham Mohammed? Shahram Mohammed. She's posted the link to the an example of the link, and I'll copy it and I'll stick it in again. Because at the end of the day, the only way we can change things is by creating a movement, showing giving them the numbers, showing that young people of color are interested in this sector. I noticed Simi, for example, says CFA Community Housing Fund was great when it lasted. My group got 60,000 from there, no more, and it's no more. So there's one person that's on the group that knows that the Community Housing Fund can work. So, but the way we've got to lobby, we've got to put our voices out there. You know, if everybody on this call gets 5 people to register on their local list, that will go a long way to starting the change. So yes, so thank you for that question. Rosita's question, I believe,
Oh, sorry.
I
if
have
you-
another question.
Bring
Well,
it.
no, like it was an answer or an addition to what you were talking about for getting on the self-build register to show interest for councils. So I do community engagement for the development team and a local authority in London. And the way we do that is we do the boring surveys and we do events where you go out and you tell people that you're knocking down a tower block on their estate and whatever it is that you're doing. But there's so much work that happens before it gets to like the council building those homes. Like the planning departments do what do they call them? Supplementary planning applications and documents and things like that, where they do surveys of the area and where they think housing should go. And all of that has like loads of bureaucratic levels of community engagement where they go out and like they statutorily have to and see whether or not people want housing there and what kind of housing they want and all of that kind of stuff. So I guess that they would then go back to like all of that standard digital campaigning activism stuff where you've got 1 million petitions to sign or whatever it is. But someone was asking a question about campaigning and how do you demonstrate support for community housing. You could essentially spend hours filling in all of these things and just demonstrating, okay, I want community housing, I want community housing, I want community housing. And it might get ignored, but that's like the forum where you, like that's a forum where you can demonstrate to whoever the local authority is that that's what you want in your area. That was it.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Rosita. I think at the end of the day, change doesn't happen by people sitting on their hands. I think change happens by people getting up and pressing. What I would also add, there are organizations outside of the community-led housing sector, organizations like We're Right Here, that is campaigning for a community act, which a community act would mean that local community groups get first refusal on land and buildings. So for example, it might not be a piece of land you get, it might be an old pub that you're gonna take on, demolish the pub and use that site to build housing. So, you know, we have to be imaginative. And what I would say is a lot of this is being done as we speak. I can take you to just outside Oxford, Bicester, where they've got the Gravenley site. They're building something like 900 houses, but I think something like out of that 900, 200 of them are going to be self-built, and they're going to be self-built plots on that land. And you're right, there will be bureaucracy, but there are organizations like I've mentioned, like the Community Land Trust Network, like the community-led housing, like the CCH, the cooperative housing movement, that will be able to go to local authorities and as I mentioned, the Right to Build task force is now running sessions with local authorities to rid them of some of that bureaucracy, because at the end of the day, it's stopping the opportunity of community-led housing. So I think we have to show there's numbers. There are others in the system that are sympathetic to this cause, that are working around and trying to change things. We just have to be ready, because a lot of projects are happening in rural areas, in, you know, outside of the big cities. What you find is in Cornwall and areas like that. And I'm not against the rural situations. I'm trying to say most of us, a fair number of us, live in urban areas, in urban cities, where we need more work being done. And we can only do that by putting our hand up and saying, what about us? How are we not getting an opportunity? I mean, I did a project 30 years ago, and I've been banging this drum for 30 years to say, give people more opportunity. And bureaucracy, there was a lot of it for when we was doing our project, but when I go up there and sit in one of the guys' houses now and have a cup of tea or have a drink and sit down, have a meal, I think, wow, it was well worth it. It was worth it. So thank you for that, Rosita. Simi, you've not got a question for me. Or Simi's screen is frozen.
That's okay. I see that Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Yes, hello again. So I think my situation is different to most. So I live in a gentrified area. However, it's still a very low income, low amount of services, low everything area. So I was wondering, is it possible to we have a lot of housing being built, but it's going to be people who are moving in from like London stuff rather than local people who are here. And the local council is either bidding or is just started a scheme to do housing specifically for local people. So I was wondering, because that's kind of already an idea that they're playing with, would it be possible to kind of like be in competition bidding for land with housing developers and put forward community builds instead to like push for that? We need housing for people who are already here rather than bringing more people in. Would that be like something, or would it be too much work, do you think?
No, yeah. My answer on that is there's two types of external housing. There's social housing and there's affordable housing. And they're two different animals. Though, you know, one's, for example, one's a tiger and one's a leopard. They're both cats, they're both housing, but they're actually different. So your plan might be for affordable housing. Yeah, so your plan, so you're not in competition with those that say they're delivering social housing, because social housing can be to be purchased, you know. So you're dealing with affordable housing, affordable rents. So you're a different animal, you're a different situation. And if they then say, oh, well, within our affordable housing, you can have some social housing, that doesn't necessarily work, you know? So you pitch to the other side of the argument. If they say they're affordable, you say they're social. If they say, oh, well, they're social, they're going to be social rents. So, because we all know housing associations are supposed to be delivering social housing, but even them the rents are too high, you know, so therefore we're going with affordable housing, affordable rents, and we want to keep these rents at an affordable level for the lifetime. Even if somebody moves, the next person comes in, gets an affordable accommodation, because affordable rent is different to social. Yeah. Hope that answers that question, Phoenix.
Somewhat, yes, thank you.
Rosita, I saw the finger.
Yeah, I just when my team was taking applications for like commercial developers to build council housing, my boss kind of threw it out there to some of the community members working with us that they could try and bid for it instead if they wanted to. And they didn't in the end. They had an alternative development proposal that they wanted to go ahead with that wasn't feasible for the money that the council had and the resources that the department had. But in theory, it was an option. I think the barrier there is the like opaqueness of the system, or the fact that it goes onto like some kind of commercial market instead of you and your flat knowing that it's happening down the road. But in theory, there's nothing stopping you. And if you're already in those conversations with the local authority teams and the housing associations and whatever, like people doing my job are desperate to talk to communities that want to talk to us. And that like yes, in theory you could. It's just like all of the other stuff, like do you have the resources? Do you have the expertise? Do you have the money? Etc.
And I agree with that. I think sometimes community don't know what they can do. The options are there, but sometimes they feel frightened because there's no supportive mechanism for them. That's why the Community Land Trust Network, the Community-Led Housing Network, the CCH, Cooperative Housing Movement, these agencies are there to support groups and communities that might feel a bit intimidated walking into planning meetings, there's good practice out there. There may be a project like Simi said, you know, she went through a process where they got £60,000. If communities know that kind of finance is out there to support them, then they'll take the option up. So it's very much about what you don't know. Next week it is I'm launching a report. I'm part of a team that's launching a report, just to give you an example, into the barriers, what have been the barriers to BME people and minority groups getting into this sector. And one of the things that comes up a lot of the time is knowledge. They don't know about how to do it. They don't know where to go and get information. So, you know, and our report highlights that and gives recommendations for how they can change that system, how they can get the information out. But then I look back and I think, when I did my project, there was no internet, there was no social media, there was no way of looking for good practice. There is now. You know, if you Google community land trust in the UK, you'll find projects all over the country, in Newcastle, in Manchester, in Liverpool, in Birmingham. So we have the network, we have the good practice out there now. So groups don't need, and part of this is raising the profile, getting more and more groups sharing the information with communities, because community engagement is a core part of delivery. So engaging the community that is around you and letting them know there is support for them.
Brilliant. We've got Dawn with their hand up as well. And I think just because it's hit 7 now, that'll be the last question. And then we'll wrap up.
I was gonna, there were 2 things I was wondering. Actually, it was more just, I posted something in the chat about to find out how many people on the call might be interested if they were supported properly. How many might be interested to set up a community land trust or would be interested in going down the path of self-build. And I think it was more just for your own engagement or gathering some information to be able to say, okay, of however many people were on the call, this many people were interested if they were supported. The other thing I just wondered is that I suppose part of this raised the issue of some hand-holding that could be done to be prepared for I think that Rosita was talking about in terms of planning, and whether or not to ensure that some groups are prepared in case they are approached by a local authority to try and bid for something. Is there something that could be done to provide that sort of hand-holding support to say, look, this is what you need to have in place if you're really interested in doing this. These are some of the mechanisms. Is that something that could be done? And if not, if it could, is there some support that we can provide to make it happen?
Again, the existing community land trust hubs that are around the country, that's their role. That's their role, to do hand-holding, to be there to help you with the information you need. The community-led advisors on the CLH website are the same kind. You know, it's our role to signpost you to people in your areas. Different areas of the country have different situations, but that's part of why the community-led advisors have been created. That's why the community land trust hubs were created, to be that holding hand for organizations trying to go forward with a project.
Brilliant. I know I said it was the last question, but just because we might have missed Sim last week, I think I just want to check if Sim has a question. and then we'll call it. If not, that's also completely okay, and we'll move on.
Simi,
Sim's got a
Simi.
question about mortgages.
Ah, brilliant.
Claude, Sim's asking,
Hi.
was also wondering who is currently giving mortgages.
Sorry?
Who is currently giving mortgages for community-led housing? Do you know much about that?
Giving mortgages.
Yeah.
Well, they are equitable financing mortgage companies out there. I'm just trying to remember what it is. Eco something. That getting mortgages is not as hard as it used to be. For community-led houses, there are a couple of mortgage brokers that have set themselves up specifically to give mortgages to community-led housing projects. And what I'll do, I'll get their information and I'll get that to Guppy and she can circulate that or get it to Rax. Yeah. But yes, there are a number of equitable financing mortgage brokers that do mortgages specifically for community-led housing. And you may go into a shared ownership option with your housing association, which means you can break, like for example, when we did Frontline, we did a shared ownership option. The self-builders who built their own houses, for their sweat equity, they got 25%. And then there was the option to buy out 25% chunks as they went along. So they only needed to get mortgages for small amounts and then build up and get a mortgage for another small amount whilst they paid rent on the other house, on the other half. But yeah, we'll share that information and again, the community-led housing websites have information on equitable mortgage brokers for community-led housing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claude. That's been really, really, really interesting. I feel like I've learned a lot as well. Just because we are ever so slightly over time, I will wrap up, but we will be following up this session with the material. We'll need a couple days to kind of edit some of the recording just to make it nice and easy to digest. But we'll be following up with that, and also a copy of the chat for this session as well as last session. Yeah, somebody did ask in the chat as well about the in-person session, which is the last of this series. It won't be next week, but it will need some time to kind of plan. So it will be likely in the new year. But I wanted to just say a big thank you to Claude, to Guppy, and to everyone for engaging and asking such brilliant questions. I've really appreciated it. I've learned a lot, and I think, yeah, it's nice to kind of leave this with a lot of insight. I have also dropped Claude's contact details and just a little bit more information in the chat. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. And I think...
And thanks to Rax for holding the whole series and helping out Claude and, yeah, putting it all together. It's been really brilliant. Thank you so much. And just, yeah, look out for an email from OutSavvy because we'll get a follow-up link where you can register your interest for the in-person event, and we'll find ways.
And you have all the emails of all the people, yeah?
Well, I can send another email by OutSavvy, and you'll have to add your email to come onto another list so I can contact you for the next event and continued connection with each other for GDPR purposes. But we will coordinate that. And yeah, DE's commitment is to try to continue the learning process between this group and Claude and anyone else who's interested. So we really appreciate you joining.
I know on OutSavvy you can follow the event organizer or the event runner, whatever they're called. So that might be a good way to make sure that, like, if you forget to put yourself on the mailing list, then you're still following the events that you're going to add. So then you can be notified that way. Yeah, just want to say thank you as well. This has been amazing. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Phoenix. Thanks everyone for coming.
Have a lovely evening, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Take care.